Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today to discuss this important initiative to combat impaired driving and make our roads safer for everyone. I applaud Governor Baker for taking the lead in addressing the public safety hazard. This is a sign of true leadership. The importance of this effort today is demonstrated by all the people who are in attendance today, including Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito, Massachusetts State Police Colonel Christopher Mason, Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, Secretary Terrence Reidy, Executive Director of the Cannabis Control Commission, Sean Collins, Mary McGuire from AAA, and of course, Risa, Clardy, and 4 of her 6 children. As prosecutors, we've seen the tragic impacts that impaired driving can have, particularly with the death of Massachusetts State Police Trooper Thomas Clardy. 2 years ago today, we sentenced the man responsible for the death of Trooper Clardy. Talking to families after a crash is one of the hardest things that we have to do in our jobs. Talking to them while they're in pain. The hardest part of our jobs, and I'm sure the state police and the police would tell you as well, it's talking to people in pain. We always ask the family at the conclusion of a case, what do you want? What they want, we can't give them. They want their loved one back. It's like comparing apples and oranges when you compare it to a jail sentence. This bill will be another tool in the toolbox. It'll be another way that we can help families like Trooper Clardy's get some sense of justice and closure. The man responsible for the death of Trooper Clardy wasn't convicted while driving under the influence of drugs, and we'd like to see that bill passed so we can better address the issue of impairment while under the influence of marijuana. More needs to be done to keep our community safe from the dangers of impaired driving, and I think that this bill is a great way, a great start to do just that. We know that marijuana negatively affects motor skills and response time while you're on the road. And oftentimes, it is that split second where you're on a windy road or on the highway that can make all the difference in the world, and we can't have drivers driving with those motor skills and reaction times impaired. I'm also glad to see that this bill includes public education and prevention. These measures, prevention and intervention, are always underutilized and always underfunded. But this bill makes a true difference in the way that this can change. I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank the governor, the lieutenant governor, the secretary, colonel, for their leadership on this issue. This truly is good government, and it's great leadership. At this point, I'd like to introduce our governor, Charles Baker.
Good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank the DA for hosting us here at the Worcester Courthouse and for those comments, your support, and that introduction. We're here today to announce the filing of critical public safety legislation that would strengthen the Commonwealth's impaired driving laws by equalizing alcohol and marijuana and giving law enforcement more tools to keep our roads safe from impaired drivers. Before I get to the new name of this legislation and the story behind it, I want to remind everyone about how we got here. This legislation would implement the recommendations of a special commission of the Cannabis Control Commission, which was designed to address impaired driving. The special commission was created 4 years ago in 2017 by our colleagues in the legislature who recognized the need to address the new public safety landscape that came with the legalization of adult use marijuana by the voters here in Massachusetts in 2016. We and our colleagues in the legislature understood that the world had changed and that the threat of motorists driving under the influence of marijuana and THC was a real public health concern. That's why in 2017, the legislature passed legislation that created a broad and diverse cross-section of experts and stakeholders to study this issue, including medical and toxicological experts, law enforcement, prosecutors, the civil defense bar, and members of the civil liberties community. This legislation is the product of the thoughtful process that was undertaken by that commission. It's long past time to implement the commission's recommendations. Adult use marijuana was legalized here in Massachusetts 5 years ago this month. The special commission offered its recommendations almost 3 years ago, and we first filed the bill shortly after that. Throughout that time, the threat of impaired drivers is still with us. This legislation, which is called Trooper Thomas Clardy, the Trooper Thomas Clardy Law. I'm going to say that again. This legislation, which is called the Trooper Thomas Clardy Law, aims to address that threat. In March 2016, Trooper Clardy was conducting a traffic stop on the Massachusetts Turnpike, doing his job to keep our roads safe. He was parked off the side of the highway when a driver swerved across 3 lanes of traffic, striking and later killing him. Later toxicological reports found that THC, the psychoactive ingredient in marijuana, was detected in the motorist's blood. We lost a dedicated member of our law enforcement community that day, an 11-year member of the state police, and a Marine Corps veteran. More importantly, the Clardy family lost a husband and a father, and his community of Hudson lost a neighbor and a friend. In a moment, Risa Clardy will speak a bit about her husband and the need to prevent future tragedies like this one. But let me just say to you, Risa, and to your family, thank you for joining us today. We're obviously honored to have this opportunity to name this bill after your husband. While we know that nothing can ever be done to erase the loss that you feel, we hope that we can honor him by advocating for this legislation and having it enacted into law to avoid future tragedies like the one that befell your family. Unfortunately, our road safety laws have not caught up to the current public safety landscape with respect to impaired driving. This bill would recognize drug recognition experts under state law and allow them to testify as expert witnesses in civil and criminal cases. It would authorize courts to take judicial notice that ingesting THC can and does impair motorists. And it would improve law enforcement's ability to test for the presence of drugs, including from a widely recognized, scientifically reliable field sobriety test. Steps like these ones would go a long way toward ensuring our road safety laws and our criminal justice system treat drug driving the same way they treat other forms of impaired driving, and will help improve the public safety from this threat. We'll also give law enforcement officers and prosecutors the tools to detect and prosecute driving while impaired cases and hopefully avoid future tragedies. We urge our colleagues in the legislature to work with us to help prevent these senseless tragedies going forward, and we're grateful for partners like Mrs. Clardy and her family, the folks at AAA, and the other stakeholders who are joining us here today to fight with us in this effort. And with that, I will turn it over to Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you all for being here for this very important announcement regarding this filing. As the Governor said, we are here to renew our commitment to avoiding future tragedies like the one that cost Trooper Clardy his life 5 years ago. The Trooper Thomas Clardy Law would ensure we have the statutory, regulatory, and training tools necessary to protect road users as the public safety landscape continues to evolve. The bill would create a legal framework to better address impaired driving under the influence of THC and marijuana. It would better integrate drug recognition experts into our judicial system and also develop educational materials and programming on drug impairment to share with trial court judges, ensuring consistency across the criminal justice system. I want to spend a minute talking about the aspects of this bill that would better equip our law enforcement officers to respond to the dangers of drug driving. The Trooper Thomas Clardy Law would boost training resources and give officers stronger tools to be able to hold those who drive impaired accountable. It would direct the Municipal Police Training Committee to expand the training of drug recognition experts, ensuring we have the resources to make crucial determinations that could save lives. and it would empower police officers to seek electronic search warrants for evidence of chemical intoxication, as is the practice in over 30 other states. These recommendations are the product of the Special Commission on Operating Under the Influence and Impaired Driving, as the governor mentioned, which was a thoughtful and substantive effort by a diverse set of stakeholders and experts, including police, prosecutors, medical and toxicological professionals, and representatives of the criminal defense bar and civil liberties community. It's time to implement these common sense recommendations, which would help avoid future tragedies on the roads here in our Commonwealth. To Risa, Clardy, and your beautiful family, and your 4 daughters who are here with you today, we thank you for joining us. We thank you for sharing your husband's name with this legislation and for lending your strong and powerful voice to this effort so that we can avoid this tragedy from happening to another family or individual here in this Commonwealth. We are very grateful for your courage and for coming forward to join us today. And with that, it's my honor to introduce Risa Clardy.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Good afternoon. 5 years ago, on March 16th, my husband, Trooper Thomas Clardy, was tragically killed at the age of 44 during a traffic stop by a driver who had used marijuana. Our lives were forever changed on that day. Our 6 children lost their hero, a man who had a love for his family and an unquenchable love for life. My husband had a big heart and was full of life and joy. His strength and his calmness held us all together. We miss his wittiness, his sense of humor, and his laughter. The emotional, mental, and physical impact from the loss of my husband has affected us in ways that no one should ever have to endure. There will always be a feeling of emptiness without Tom here, an emptiness that will never be filled. My family and I feel that by implementing the Trooper Thomas Clardy law, it will provide measures that will improve roadway safety and prevent another senseless tragedy, another family torn apart by the loss of a loved one. Thank you. Mary McGuire, thank you.
Thank you, Risa, for your advocacy. Good afternoon, Governor Baker, Lieutenant Governor Polito, DA Early, Secretary Reidy, Colonel Mason, Commissioner Collins, and most importantly, Mrs. Clardy and Gabriella, Lily, Emma, and Eva. We at AAA Northeast are so sorry for your loss, and we applaud the Baker-Polito administration for naming this bill in honor of your husband and father. We support this life-saving legislation, and we thank you for Trooper Clardy's service and sacrifice to the Commonwealth. Trooper Clardy is one of many victims whom we mourn. Impaired driving continues to take a severe toll, with roughly a third of all roadway deaths across the U.S. attributed to driving under the influence of alcohol and/or drugs. More than 10,000 people in 2019, one person dying on our roadways every 52 minutes due to impaired driving. Cannabis and prescription drug use have complicated the equation, making polysubstance abuse a growing concern. And just because recreational marijuana is legal, it's not safe for drivers to use. So don't drive high. In the words of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, if you feel different, you drive different. With that in mind, AAA Northeast created Shifting Gears, the blunt truth about marijuana and driving, a program for teen drivers. To date, we've shared Shifting Gears' safety message with more than 25,000 teens in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. When it comes to cannabis, whether you smoke, vape, or swallow edibles, getting behind the wheel when you're high on marijuana or drunk endangers everyone on the road. In fact, next to alcohol, marijuana is the drug most commonly found in drivers who have been involved in collisions. Our AAA research tells us that cannabis can negatively impact driving ability, slowing decision-making and reaction time, making it harder to judge distance and stay in your lane, reducing coordination and peripheral vision, and according to some studies, doubling crash risk. Last Monday night, I was driving on a dark road when a deer darted out just 10 feet in front of me. It was an unavoidable collision, but I was able to react and brake immediately, which reduced damage to my car, the deer, and me. I shudder to think how different the outcome could have been for an impaired driver. Life changes in an instant. I applaud the work of my colleagues on the Special Commission on OUI and Impaired Driving, some of whom are here with us today. Our recommendations have been incorporated into this critically important bill, and we encourage anyone who cares about roadway safety to join AAA Northeast in support. Once again, our thanks to the Clardy family and to the Baker-Polito administration for prioritizing the potent and real danger of impaired driving. And now I'd like to introduce Sean Collins, Executive Director of the Cannabis Control Commission and Chair of the Special Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. First, I'd like to thank Governor Baker, Lieutenant Governor Polito, and your administration for your leadership in prioritizing the safety of Massachusetts roadways for our residents and inviting me here today. I also want to thank our fellow speakers, especially the Clardy family, for sharing your stories and keeping front and center the gravity of the work that we're here to discuss. Although most people might recognize me as the Executive Director of the state's Cannabis Control Commission, I'm here on my own in my different capacity, which is as Chair of the Special Commission on Operating Under the Influence and Impaired Driving. As you may know, the Special Commission was an independent group of public health, public safety, and social justice stakeholders, which we reported to the legislature and was created by the 2017 legalization of cultivation, sale, and adult use marijuana. Our work did follow the voter-approved legalization effort in 2016. When Massachusetts residents decided they wanted our state to take an existing underground market and regulate it, they voted for public health and safety. In addition to tracking marijuana products from seed to sale, ensuring that all products are tested and safe, and labeling things so that consumers and patients may understand what it is that they're putting into their bodies, the Commonwealth is also obligated to make sure that there are strong safeguards to prevent the risks presented by impairing substances. I'd also like to note that the Special Commission was concerned about all intoxicating substances, not just cannabis. In 2018, the 14 members of our Special Commission spent many weeks discussing the challenges around driving under the influence and engaging with a diverse group of stakeholders and experts to understand and identify solutions. Our work started with a basic premise: you don't, under any circumstances, drive better when you're impaired. I'm proud that this legislation implements many of our findings and empowers the public with expanded resources to prevent driving under the influence of any intoxicating substance. As Chair of the Special Commission on Operating Under the Influence and Impaired Driving, I'm glad to be a partner in today's efforts, and I remain grateful to the Baker-Polito administration for leading the way on this important issue. It's my pleasure now to turn it back to the Governor for any questions you may have.
Questions for any of us?
Governor, the commission's report came out in 2019. Why do you think we still don't have a law on the books, making impaired driving under marijuana similar to what you see with DUIs with alcohol?
Yeah, I don't know why this legislation hasn't found its way back to my desk, and especially since the commission that was established to study it was in fact put together by the legislature as part of the original legislation that legalized adult use marijuana. In addition to that, the legislation basically drives off of the recommendations that were made by that special commission. And it would seem to me that it would be fairly consistent for the legislature to review, consider, and ultimately adopt a series of public safety recommendations that would come from an organization and a commission that was basically empowered by them to study those issues and make recommendations to us about how to make sure that the roads would be safe. And the other thing that frustrates me about this is here we are, it's 2 years later, and we have yet to incorporate any of the tools in the toolbox into the ongoing act of public safety or judicial review. The courts can't pursue information, guidance, expert testimony, unless there's a statutory framework for them to do that. So we've already lost 2 years, okay? And none of that stuff was available when Trooper Clardy got rear-ended. I think it's critically important at this point in time that the legislature move on legislation that's quite consistent with the commission that they seek to impanel to answer this very fundamental question so that we can put the tools into the toolbox that, as the Lieutenant Governor pointed out, are being used in many other states, and that, as Mary and the folks at AAA have pointed out, involves a significant number of incidents, crashes, and tragedies that take place on our roads. That's probably more than you wanted, Aaron, sorry. Do you guys have any other on topic?
Real quick, Governor Reidy, is there a timeline on this? Looking at you said that do you have a hopeful timeline on this?
Well, our hope would be that this would be something that would be addressed during this legislative session, which means that it would get through the process and back to us for signature by the end of July.
I just wanted to ask as well, there was a public employee from your administration who was recently revealed that they had been moonlighting using an adult website called OnlyFans. I just wanted to ask, what is your stance on public employees from your administration who moonlight on sites such as OnlyFans? Do you believe that they should be terminated for using those sites?
Well, I would never speak to the particulars of any specific circumstance involving a personnel decision, but I will say that that employee's been let go.
When people are making in a certain range, $50,000 range is a lot less than what the area median income is in Boston. Would you fire employees who are working for an organization that night, such as like Uber or something like that?
Decisions we make with respect to personnel are usually based on the specifics of each circumstance and each set of facts. In this particular case, we made a decision. We let her go.
Last question.
Governor, there's been recently a lot of, police involved shootings or, police getting hurt on the job. Dropped in yesterday in Boston, and I think there's an incident in UV at this time.
Yeah.
Can you speak about that, please?
Well, I think certainly, look, anybody who takes the oath and puts on the uniform and chooses a career in public safety knows that they are pursuing a career choice that comes with risk. It's part of their training. It's a big part of what they go through with respect to whatever academy they need to work their way through. And coming out of a pandemic, which was an enormously challenging and difficult period for everyone, I think that level of risk has probably been escalated a bit. The other thing I would say is that Massachusetts has among the most well-trained and the best suited to be law enforcement officers in this day and age. The nature of the work is more transparent than it's ever been because everybody has a camera in their phone, and these folks recognize, appreciate that, and act accordingly. And that's why the chiefs, for the most part, supported the legislation that we worked so hard to enact to dramatically enhance the role of the Municipal Police Training Council, the academies that are operated by the state police, and the creation of the Post Commission. And I do believe that here in Massachusetts, we do this better than most, but there's no question, no matter how well this gets done, the men and women in uniform who swear that oath are going to find themselves at times in incredibly dangerous and difficult circumstances, and I really hope that when they do, they come out of it in one piece. And we've had several incredibly close calls here in Massachusetts, and I know I speak for the Lieutenant Governor, myself, and everybody else in this room and the people of Massachusetts when I say that we're incredibly grateful that no one who was wearing that uniform was killed as a result of those incidents. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. Yeah, really appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe. Much appreciated.
Yeah, really. I'm hoping we can.
Good work. I hope you guys get this thing.
Yeah, let us know how we're going to help.
This thing's through. We'll get a hearing.
You have an amazing group of advocates. I remember being on the board.
Nice to see you.